All right, three, two, one. All right, we are welcomed with a huge guest. One of my favorite people ever because he went to the best school also ever. Jay Bilas, former Dookie commentary. He's a lawyer. This guy's way too smart for me to be talking to him. But Jay, I want to welcome you to our first ever. You're our first guest of the Roundball podcast, so congratulations on that.
Quite an honor. Thank you, guys. And when you said best school ever, you must be talking about Rolling Hills High School.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm a life. I Duke is like all I watch. I don't care about half the other schools like these guys, but Duke is my favorite school. So I need to talk to you just straight up right away. How was playing slash coaching with Coach K?
Oh, God, it was awesome. When I played for him, he wasn't the Coach K. He was the same guy, but he wasn't the same iconic figure. So I really got to know him before he was all this. And I was really lucky to play for him when I did. And then I was a grad assistant for him for 3 years in 90, 91, 92. So those were the Bobby Hurley, Christian Laettner, Grant Hill years, Thomas Hill, all those guys. So we didn't lose very much. It was a pretty fun time to learn the game and a fun way to do it. So I've been really lucky. And for me, playing for him when I did, like the guys that played for him in the last 10 years, they played for a better coach than I did. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to think that Coach K continued to get better, so he's a better coach. But they didn't have the years of his mentorship and friendship that all of us had that played for him back in the day when he first started. So it was really the best of every world that one could ask for.
Is he the most intense basketball mind you've ever been around, you'd say?
Yeah, I would say so. Because I spent the most time with them, certainly. I don't. It's funny, Jordan. I don't know that if there was some sort of X and O contest among the greatest coaches, that Coach K would necessarily win that. He'd certainly be competitive for it, but I kind of feel like his success has been more about his ability to reach people on a granular level. Like he's so good at connecting not only with each individual player, but connecting players with one another and getting. He's got this incredible ability to make the complicated simple, and that's really meaningful. We never felt unprepared, but we never felt overburdened, and sort of we never felt like there was too much coming at us. He had a great ability to cut through all the nonsense and get to what was important for us. And we scouted other teams, and we were aware of other teams, but we were also really focused on what it took for us to be successful. And he didn't treat all of us the same, but he treated us differently, but he treated everybody fairly, and that was pretty cool.
This is music to my ears because all I hear on the internet is how he makes everything about himself, all this stuff. I'm like, this guy has helped so many kids like create their dreams to get to the NBA, get them ready for the NBA. He has created such a program at Duke that like no one can ever do, I think, again in college basketball.
That's probably true. I think one of the things about college coaches, and Coach K is included in this, because you recruit, it has to be about you, and the coaches are the coaches are kind of the constant at these schools, and so the players, they may stay 4 years, 3, sometimes less. The players are the most important thing. Like I think Coach K would agree with this. I don't know that he would, but no great coach wins without great players. It certainly wins at that level. You can lose with great players, but you can't win without them. He knows that. He's always been, I think Coach K has always been respectful of how important the player contribution is to winning. And he's also been respectful about, and this goes way back, that the players' jobs are harder than the coaches' jobs are. Like the coaches don't have opponents. And I want to be clear about that. Like there's competition, but there's nobody physically trying to stop any coach from doing what he or she wants to do. Nobody tries to get in their way for a timeout or, keep physically try to stop them from doing things. The players have physical competition and they have an opponent trying to stop them from doing what they're intending to do. And he was always really respectful of that, respectful of everybody's roles and how difficult it was. But look, I get it when people say stuff about, these different coaches, that it's all about them. I mean, you open these press guides and the coach's resume is 10 pages and the player gets one. But that's largely because of recruiting. When I was playing, the media guide was actually for the media. Now the media guide is for recruiting. It's all about how many NBA players the program has, and it's about the program success and all that stuff. But he gets more pages because his resume is so ridiculously good. It takes you 10 pages to get through just what he's done in the last couple of years.
Jay, I'm kind of enamored by this year's team, right? You have 3 top 10 recruits. I saw Lively play in high school at the Westtown School. You have Whitehead, you have Filipowski, you have a new coach, Jon Scheyer. We obviously know they're a little different of a school now. They're starting to get those big-time players, the guys that are leaving. What do they look like now under Jon Scheyer? Does it really change that much?
Well, yes and no. So it hasn't changed a ton as far as the caliber of player they're getting. He got the #1 recruiting class coming in, and with Derek Lively II, Dariq Whitehead, you mentioned Filipowski and Jordan Shute and all these guys. He's got a great class. So they'll be similar in the fact they're super talented and super young. They do have some older players coming back. They lost a couple to transfer, as is the way of the world now. But maybe the most important player they have is Jeremy Roach, who's coming back for his junior year. He had a spectacular second half of his sophomore year, and I would expect that he's going to build upon that and be even better this year. But his leadership, the fact that he's been there, knows the system, I think is going to be important. And look, people are gonna look at Jon Scheyer and say, well, things are going to be different. Well, I mean, there'll be some differences. But Jon Scheyer is fully prepared for this. He's a great young coach. He played there, won a national championship in 2010. He's been an assistant there for 9 years or so, whatever it is. And he's ultra smart. He's got his own personality. And Coach K gives this advice to people a lot. He'll say, just be you. You is good enough, that kind of thing. And I've always thought about that when he said it and said, well, that's really good advice if you know who you are. If you don't know who you are, then just be you might not be the best advice. But for Scheyer, just be you is great advice because he knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly how he wants to do this. And I think he's prepared for the fact that, if they win a game 100-95, people are going to say, well, that's not Coach K defense. He's going to hear that kind of nonsense. And he's mature enough and I think secure enough. Mature might not be the issue. It might be, which he is, but it might be the fact that he's very secure in who he is. I don't think that's going to bother him. And an example of that is right down the road from Duke, Hubert Davis last year. Hubert Davis had to listen to a lot of nonsense throughout the course of the regular season. But, Hubert's one of my really valued friends. We worked together for 7 or 8 years at ESPN, and there's nobody in the world I respect more than Hubert. And he never wavered, never thought about changing anything in his personality, the way he went about it. He just stayed strong to his principles and values, and look what happened. And I think we'll see, who knows whether it ends in the national championship game or in the second round or whatever for Duke, but because those are all possibilities for any team. But I don't have 1 ounce of doubt that Jon is going to do a great job. The only issue he has to face, and he'll handle it, is he's inheriting the toughest job, the toughest act to follow in the history of college sports, in my view. That you could say, okay, well, what about John Wooden or Bear Bryant? Look who followed them. Those guys didn't do everything on television and the internet and all that. Coach K has been a staple of television since the mid 1980s, and so there's no coach in college history that's been as recognizable to the brand as he's been to Duke. So that's going to be an adjustment in the minds of some people, maybe many people. But I don't think it's going to take Jon very long to solidify his position there and who he is and how good he is.
Well, hearing you say that's interesting because I don't think any of us were born at that time when he was that, the mid 80s. I mean, I don't think me, Jordan, or Marty were born, which is crazy.
Jeff, I don't think you needed to point that out.
He literally just straight up called Jay Bilas old.
Yeah, it's a really nice way of you to refer to me as the oldest horse in the barn here.
But I did call you one of my idols.
Somebody's about to take out and put a bullet in, by the way. I'm probably the horse that's going to be shot while you thoroughbreds are out there. Right? You 3-year-old fillies are out there, going for the Kentucky Derby. But thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
I did call you one of my idols, though. I will say this real quick, just building off of new coaches. Jay Wright's going to be a pretty hard act to follow as well.
Yes.
That's a prestigious name. We lose the GQ, Mr. GQ. What do you think Kyle Neptune looks like in his first year? He's obviously a good basketball guy. He learned under Jay. What do you think his future looks like?
It's a similar challenge to what Jon Scheyer is inheriting at Duke, and Kyle Neptune was at Villanova, so he's well-versed in the Villanova way, sort of the Villanova attitude, if you will, and went to Fordham and took a program that was really down and had really struggled. Fordham, I've covered Fordham for a lot of years, and Rose Hill Gym is one of the great venues in college basketball. It doesn't get credit for it. But, they were in the Patriot League. They were outside of Division I, no scholarships, all that. And he took them to, I can't remember whether they're 500 or a game over 500, which was a quantum leap for Fordham. So he's the real deal. He's going to do really well, too. I mean, it's hard to sit here for all of us that follow the game and have been immersed in it for so long to speak with conviction about whether somebody's going to kill it or, but both Kyle and Jon, and, Hubert Davis, those guys they're worthy of killing it. They've got the ability to. There are certain things that happen where you might have a down year or something and things go against you. But all three of those guys are, in my view, are the real deal. And obviously all three of them can't win a national championship this year, but I think all three of them will do really well.
I do have a question about with like NIL now, because I do feel like coaching has become a lot harder now with it, because there's some kids that won't get out of bed with $20,000 for an NIL deal. Like they're making millions of dollars. I'm so happy that they are. Shout out Jordan for helping that happen. But like they deserve every part of it. But do you think it's like, do they like lack maybe some respect for a coach now where they're making millions now and it's like they don't care for if it's like a Tom Izzo type of coach or whatever? Or do you think it's still the same thing?
I think it's largely the same. I think money is a factor now for a player. It was never a factor before because it wasn't allowed. But I think you look to any NBA team. And you've got players that are making different amounts of money, and including making far more than the coaches make in the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, you name it. And yet they have the same love for one another as teammates. They value winning the same way. They work hard the same way. I don't recall anybody questioning Tom Brady's love for the game because he's one of the highest paid players in the NFL. Money and love are not mutually exclusive, love for the game. But there's been this narrative in college sports that because of this phony amateurism ideal that we've lived under for all these decades, that somehow if players are paid, then they don't love the game. And, they were supposed to play for love of the game. Well, there are a bunch of guys that have been unpaid that didn't love the game. That doesn't have anything to do with, love for the game has nothing to do with money. And look, the coaches have been making a ton of money for a long time now. And that's great. I have zero problem with that. My only issue for all these years is let the players compete in that same arena. They're playing pro sports. College sports are pro. They always have been. And so now the players are, at least have some restrictions off of them. But I don't see it like I watch a lot of college football, and it's not like they're going to be beating my door down to be on college game day for football. But I don't notice any difference in the play on the field or the way teammates react to one another or how hard they work in the NIL era. It is a little bit more difficult for coaches in keeping their rosters together because of the transfer portal. Truth is, you can't treat players as badly as you were allowed to treat them years ago. Can't do that. So they're going to have to treat them better. And if you tell them that they're going to start when you recruit them, they better start, or you shouldn't tell them that. So I think coaches are more accountable to what they say now. And look, if they don't play a guy in his freshman or sophomore year, they better have a reason for it and better communicate it that, hey, your time's coming, all that stuff. Otherwise, the player's going to leave. And if they're students to be treated like any other student, then what's the problem? They should be allowed to go. But now that they're getting paid, I think what you're seeing, at least what I'm seeing, is more players have come back that otherwise would have gone pro in basketball. That's happening in football too. And I think they're heavily invested in what they're doing. So I don't see it as being a problem. It's just different. And what I see are the old school guys, the older coaches are complaining about it. Yep. And the younger guys are adjusting to it because this is the way the world is. And I just don't think it's that big of a deal. And what we're seeing too, at least what I'm seeing, and I don't have all the data to back this up, but it's sort of anecdotal, is I'm seeing more talent spread around. You're like right now, Alabama football, they may have their biggest problem is going to be recruiting the depth that they've had over the years. Like, how are they going to stockpile as many players when those players may be more valuable somewhere else? So that's going to spread talent around, make things more competitive. And that's a good thing. And I think it's a good thing. Like we're talking in basketball, it's preseason right now, but the story really is all of the mature, experienced, older players that have come back for another year, when in the past they would have been gone into the NBA. And how is that not a net positive, not only for the product, but for the player, if we believe that education is important, that they're staying in school?
Yeah, like a Drew Timmy, right? Like he would no chance he would be back if this NIL money,
Drew Timmy, Armando Bacot, Oscar Shibwe. I mean, you can go Hunter Dickinson. You can go down a long list of players that you could say, well, they would have been second-round pick. Well, how many times have second-round picks left early in the past? And now they're coming back. And, I just think it's a net positive for everybody. And look, there's a selfish component to that for me. I'd rather watch them play in college than in the NBA. I consume a bunch of the NBA product, but I don't work in that space. I work in the college space. And people say they want these guys to stick around. Now they're sticking around. So I don't think anybody's going to care about any of this in 3-4 years. It might take less time than that. But I don't think anybody cares what car Oscar Shibwe is driving or what commercials he's doing. I don't think anybody cares. And because they don't care with the coaches, they don't care with anybody else. They don't care with pro athletes. And as we go forward, I think the interest in this is gonna diminish to the point where we'll only care about what they do on the floor and the interesting stories they have off of it.
What's still frustrating with me, Jay, I know you're pretty active on advocating still with the base you have and the foundation you've built in college basketball. Frustrates with me is now that I'm out of basketball. I mean, I realize how corrupt the business was, but we're just talking about NIL here alone. There's still so much that needs to be done in the NCAA space. From, there's health and safety protocols that aren't even followed at some of these schools. Title IX is non-existent, not enforced by the NCAA. You just don't go down the line what still needs to be worked on. So I'm curious on your take. And I'm kind of alluding to the fact that with the conference realignment, it just shows more and more money that's being brought in by these media rights. Is it almost destined to happen that athlete revenue sharing will happen within the next couple of years?
I don't know about revenue sharing, but I do think, Jordan, that we're going to see athletes be signed to contracts, whether they're personal services contracts or they're just employment contracts with the school. It's neater, cleaner, and easier for the school. Right now, we've seen into the void created by the lack of legislation, the lack of foresight by the NCAA on the NIL front. We're seeing these collectives come in, and now you're seeing administrators, ADs, and the like complain about, well, now there are inducements for players to transfer and all this other stuff. You can give whatever inducement you want to a regular student, and they're not complaining about inducements to assistant coaches to leave one school and go to another. That's business, and it'll be business with regard to players. But if you want players to stay put, if that's ultimately the goal, retention of your talent, then you need to sign them to contracts so they'll stay. They're performing a service, and they can perform that service and go to school at the same time. Like, look, I've never been a fan of the student athlete moniker. It was created by Walter Byers back in the day. He was the executive director of the NCAA when I was playing, back in the dark ages before you guys were born. But they created student athletes so the NCAA wouldn't have to deal with workers' compensation claims, and that moniker has stuck. And even I refer to them sometimes as student athletes, even though I hate the name. But when you think about what does student really mean, we all went to school with students, different kinds of students. You went with students who were all in on their academic work. And then you went with others who were more devoted to the Greek system than they were to their academic work.
Yep.
All student means is
people like Marty.
Yeah, exactly. But seriously, all student means is you're enrolled in school. So that, from an eligibility standpoint, that's really what the NCAA needs to be concerned about. Are they enrolled in school, and are they a full-time student? Other than that, I don't think anybody needs to worry about it. And I don't care what any student takes. That's up to the school. And their grades and all that, if they dip below a certain level, like I don't even know what the stupid thing is, whether it's a 2.0 or 2.5 or whatever. Well, a 2.5 at one place is different than a 2.5 in another. Yeah. And when we put these artificial limits in, all it does is encourage players to take the easier path, and encourages the administrations to put them in the easier path to keep them eligible, so they can make you more money. And I don't think it's all craven, but there are craven parts to it that we can fix by just saying, hey, look, here are the rules. Like, game starts at 1. If you step out of bounds, it's my ball. If I foul you when you take a 3-pointer, you get 3 free throws. Those are the rules. The rest of it should be up to each school. And I think it's pretty simple. And if East Carolina doesn't think it's fair that they don't have the resources that North Carolina does, then don't play the Tar Heels. But if you want to play, show up at 1 o'clock and play. Other than that, you do your thing, we'll do ours, and we'll see at 1 o'clock.
Like, the NCAA just needs a common sense department. You just said very normal things that are very fixable with the most common sense in the world. It wasn't like you're recreating the whole system. It's just like, look at it as a normal human being almost,
Well,
yeah, but Marty, they've been trying to protect something that was unjustifiable. That being the restriction on athletes and money.
Still trying to do it.
They're still trying to do it. But in order to do that, they had to create this higher purpose that somehow, they were protecting athletes from exploitation. You're like, what? You're protecting them from exploitation? You're the ones exploiting them. Yeah. Like, and exploiting, like, people, I can't tell you how many times that I've mentioned the word exploitation, and you get gasps from administrators saying, we're not exploiting them. How about you at ESPN? Like, well, we're pretty upfront about why we're doing this. We're doing this for money. Like, we're putting the games on TV for money, and we're paying you guys a lot of money to put the games on TV. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to sell the games to us. I can't. And this is another thing, just to that point. Jordan, you played in them. You guys, we all dealt with it. 9:30 games on a weeknight. So I'd have a 9:30 game somewhere. and somebody from the school would say, how could you guys put this game on at 9:30? These guys got to go to school tomorrow, and all these fans are coming in. They're not going to get home till after midnight. And it's going, look, you guys can play whenever you want. Like, you can play all your games at noon. We pay more at 9:30. Like, we pay more at 9:30, and you took the money. So don't complain. Like, you want to give the money back, we'll do the game tomorrow at noon. But you got to give the money back. And none of them want to do that.
Yeah.
And you know, exploitation to me is when you sell someone and then at the same time don't allow them to benefit in the same marketplace. That's exploitation. And now it's less so because of NIL, but they're still not letting the athlete benefit to their full value. And they're still in a very real sense being exploited. And it's not just the big shots. It's not just Iowa or Duke or North Carolina or whatever. Look at some of the smaller, quote unquote, smaller schools from these smaller conferences. For basketball teams, even football teams, they play a ton of road games in their non-conference, and they get these big guarantees. And so they're trotting these players all over the country to get guarantees. They don't play hardly any home games before they get to their conference. And they're doing it to make money so their athletic department has more money. I mean, that's exploitation to the hilt. And they're not being allowed anything either.
I wanted to ask you kind of on that level. Coppin State University has mentioned that a lot of their athletic program is funded through pay for play. And in the end, their student athletes have to still maintain a grade point average. And at the end of the year, if they don't maintain that grade point average, they're not allowed to participate in postseason play. How on earth, if you're going to talk about exploitation, that's exploitation. Because in the end, they can't be student athletes like someone at Duke could be a student athlete. So there's more exploitation going on by them than anybody, really.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And look, we can argue about should they be required to do all that stuff? Should there be revenue sharing across the board? But we've got this system. There are 300, I don't even know what it is now, 356 Division I institutions playing basketball. So that's too many. There's no way that all those schools can compete on the same level. It's like saying there are 356 national chains, national hamburger chains. You know, McDonald's is going to do better than the more of the local regional burger chains. And they can pay more to their employees and provide benefits. It's unfair. It's not. And then you hear all these third grade arguments. It's not fair. You know, this isn't fair. We don't have the same resources. Not fair. And it's not fair, but it's equitable, or it's not equitable, but it's fair. I should say it's not equitable, but it's fair, because all those same schools, the rules of the game are the same. And so if they want to play. But all these schools are using sports not just to generate revenue, which is a big part of it, but they're using sports for institutional advancement. Take Butler, for example. Like in 2010 and 11, Butler was in the Horizon League. Brad Stevens was their coach, and they made the championship game 2 years in a row. After that, Brad Stevens went to the Boston Celtics, and Butler went to the Big East. You know, they like money too. And they took it. And now their school is twice as big in enrollment as it was then. You know, they use basketball to advance the institution, to rise up in the U.S. News and World Report rankings of schools, to become more selective. And a bunch of schools have done that with regard. Like, look at the University of Alabama since Nick Saban's there. That entire school is new. It's all new. They've built new buildings. It's their academic standing's gone way up because of the money they've made in football and the profile and all that stuff. It's a hot school now, which it wasn't by comparison, 10, 15 years ago. And Gonzaga, you use all these different examples. The Ivy League has used sports in the last 10 years to advance themselves as well. So look, it's a powerful tool, and it's a money-making tool. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. The only thing wrong with it is until now, the athlete hasn't been allowed to participate in the business. Now, to some extent, with NIL, they can, but it's still not their full value.
Well, we're also seeing it at Jackson State University. I mean, they had very poor facilities. Deion Sanders comes in, Now kids want to start going to HBCUs. It's helped a lot of people in general. I want to ask you quickly, Jay, about Houston. I think they're one of the best basketball cultures that's turned in the last 5 years or so. They're constantly in the Final Four. Kelvin Sampson has that culture. You know what I'm talking about, obviously.
I hate that word.
But they have it there. They have
People
that.
love saying culture.
They have that thing,
like,
though. They have that, every player can defend, and they just have that type of player. They're getting top 10 recruits. They finally got their first top 10 recruit in Jarace Walker. They're starting to look like a team that, is going that Gonzaga way. They're starting to be there every year. They're one of the top 3 teams in the country, probably. What do you think about Houston?
Really an amazing transformation because Houston, while they were a great program in the 80s with Clyde Drexler and Akeem Olajuwon, all those guys going to Final Fours, and Guy V. Lewis was their coach. Their facilities were substandard, and they went a lot of years where they didn't have the resources. They played in the old Hoffheinz Pavilion, which was a pit and hadn't really changed much since the 80s. I played there actually in the 80s. And now, they've got the Fertitta Center. They put a lot of money into the program. They've upgraded it. And then Kelvin Sampson came in and brought, sort of that toughness level. They get out and defend, they rebound, and they've gotten obviously much better players. And they're getting even better players now. And that's going to even improve as they go to the Big 12. I don't know when that is, a year from now, 2 years, whatever. But they're a legit threat. They've been to a Final Four already under Kelvin Sampson. They're a threat to do it again this year, and I don't see that changing as long as he's there. But they've made a commitment, an institutional commitment to basketball, and you're seeing the results of it. But now their facilities are really good. They're geared up the right way. Everything's on a higher level. They're still not, where UCLA or Duke or whatever, Michigan, some of these programs. But they're knocking on that door, and the success is providing even more resources for them to tap into. But Kelvin Sampson's been a friend of mine for I don't know how long now, and he's the real deal. Like, I think he's a Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame coach, and I think ultimately he'll be there. He won at Washington State. He started out at Montana Tech, I think, but he did a great job at Washington State. He took Oklahoma to the Final Four in 2002, had Indiana rolling, and things went off the rails a little bit there with a couple of issues. But he's the real deal, and he's proven it everywhere he's been.
I want to just talk. You mentioned a guy that's came back as NIL, that Hunter Dickinson. That moron is on our podcast as well. He's actually out right now doing NIL. So we got to at least get some. What's your perspective on Hunter this year in Michigan? Because they had a lot of expectations last year. They started out slow. They actually did pretty well in the tournament, obviously. But what's the expectations for them?
I think they'll be really good. I'm going to see them in December. I've got them already on my schedule, and one of the things I'm going to enjoy most about this year is it's kind of the year of the big guy. Mm-hmm. There's so many talented post players that have the ability to step away from the basket and do things in screen roll situations and pick and pop stuff. And Hunter's one of those guys. I think he's having a great career, and I think this year he'll play even better as long as he stays healthy. But Michigan's one of those programs with, they got Juwan Howard back from the NBA, and he's done a terrific job. And I love the fact that, we say it's a guards game. It's kind of like saying the NFL is about quarterbacks. But, I think the year is going to be decided this year by big guys. There's first team preseason All-America is 4 big guys and Marcus Sasser from Houston. Other than that, it's all like post players and guys that play around the rim. So it's the big guys are going to decide a lot this year. I think it's going to be really fun.
What's your thoughts on Indiana? I have them being the top team in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be really good. They've got some really good players coming in, especially at the point with Jordan Hood-Schifino and having Trace Jackson Davis back, Race Thompson. They're going to be very good. The Big Ten's kind of a puzzle to me this year because the league lost so many of its top scorers from last year. It might be 15 of the top 20 are gone. So there's some mystery there as to just how good some of these teams are going to be. But I don't doubt that they'll be really good. And Purdue's got Zach Edey back, and he's not the only one. So they'll be very good. But I do think Indiana should be considered the front runner for Big Ten champion. It's interesting. Like you've been through it, Jordan, but like the Big Ten years ago was they held out. They didn't have a tournament for the longest time, and I don't think there was any more regular season championship that was more valued than the Big Ten championship was in the regular season. I don't know that that's changed completely. It's changed a little bit because now the NCAA tournament's everything. But I think the Big Ten championship still has a lot of value, and they've got the ability to win it this year.
Jay, one final question from me. There's a reason I mentioned age. I had a method to my madness. I was born in 1989, and young Jeezy was part of my childhood. Okay, he's obviously big in your tweets. The greatest Jeezy song ever written is "Go Crazy." What's your favorite?
My Hood is my favorite, but
right one.
I have a whole lot of favorites with him. Back far before you were born, I grew up in Los Angeles and went to Rolling Hills High School, and all of my teammates and I used to listen to. We got hooked on a band called the Sugar Hill Gang, which everybody knows.
1979, I believe.
Yeah, it was 1979. I was a freshman in high school, and or actually going into my sophomore year, and we sang that when we were working out, and it was blaring all the time, and that was sort of the start of sort of rap and hip hop, and a bunch of suburban kids got into it, and that's where it started for me. Was like I listened to a lot of stuff. It would be totally wrong for people to think that I listen to rap and hip hop only. I'm far from that. I'm a big old time Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin guy growing up. But rap and hip hop have been a big source of enjoyment for me over the years, and Jeezy's just one I kind of hooked on with.
You said you hung out with him. How was that?
Yeah, so when the whole tweet thing started, it probably started 12 years ago. Oddly enough, we were at a Big Ten venue doing game day, and I think it was 2011, 2010, give or take, and Draymond Green was listening to some headphones, going through warm-ups while we had our game day set on the floor, and we asked him what he was listening to, and he said Young Jeezy. And I think Hubert Davis, I'm pretty sure it was Hubert Davis, leaned over to me when that happened and said, "Is that on your playlist?" Or back then it was your iPod. That's how long ago it was. Right. And I said, "Actually, it is." I had TM 101 on there and some other stuff, and so people that heard that disputed that I actually listened to the Snowman. So I got on Twitter, and somehow, like, I was having to prove whatever limited street cred I had, and I shot some lyrics back. I shot some lyrics back at people, and somehow I had to stop doing it. Going back and forth on mentions with different fans, and I literally had to go into my office. So I said, I got to go to work, and it just sort of caught on, and I don't know how it happened. And I used to do it. I do it every morning, but I used to actually, I get up early, and I used to wake up and do it. And I do it at 6:10 or 6:05, whatever. I schedule them the night before now, so God forbid I wake up after 6:30.
Do you really? You schedule them the night before? That's great.
I schedule them the night before just because there are a couple of reasons I do it. One is because it does get a little tiresome to wake up in the morning and you're trying to brush your teeth and get your day started, and then you're going, "Damn, I got to put the tweet out."
Do you think you ever run out of lyrics?
I've duplicated. I've gone back to the same thing multiple times, but I try to avoid that as much as I can. But the other part is I have to actually look and be thoughtful that I might not know all the meaning of some of these things, and I got to make sure that so I do some editing at times, and I make sure that what I'm putting out is not not all of it's going to be, for preschoolers, but I make sure that it's not anything too far out of bounds.
Sure.
And I have to make sure that, the stuff that I hear in songs, I actually heard. Cause I've had the wrong lyrics to songs I grew up with, thinking they're saying something, they're actually saying something else. So I double check it and make sure I'm right.
100%. I would be tweeting out stuff and get in trouble probably on accident all the time. I'm not the smartest of the bunch, Jay. That's why, I love you, but it's not fair that you get to be like good at basketball and like smart. You got to pick either one. It's not fair.
I'm not sure I'm either. I wasn't that good at basketball, and I'm not sure I'm that smart. I'm just older than you guys.
To get you out of here, thank you for your time. Seriously, this has been awesome, and just hearing.
What kind of wine you drinking, by the way?
It's a lovely Pinot Noir.
Oh, I love a nice noir. So I don't know if you know what calls you're on or whatever, but Duke, Iowa, at MSG. Are you going to be there? You think or no?
I'm going to be there. That's the Jimmy V Classic. I don't know whether I'm on that game because both Dick Vitale and I are members of the board of the V Foundation. So each of us does one game there. So I'm not sure whether which of the two games I have yet.
All right. Well, if you're bored, our office is right next to MSG. But
I'd love to come over because I almost went to Iowa. Jordan doesn't know this. I almost went to Iowa when I was coming out of high school. Yeah, when I was coming out of high school, I had a difficult relationship with my high school coach. I think all the players did that played for him. But when I was getting recruited, I didn't care where I went to school. This sounds crazy, but it's true. I only cared about the coach I played for. And so when I was being recruited, Lute Olson was the head coach at Iowa when I was in high school, coming out of high school. And he recruited me pretty hard and took a visit to Iowa. He and his wife took me to the Amanas for dinner. And, I spent the weekend in Iowa City. And, I loved Coach Olson. And it came down to Duke and Iowa. The other schools I was down to were Syracuse with Jim Boeheim and Kansas. Ted Owens was the coach of Kansas, and I just revered him and still do. But yeah, I was inches away from going to Iowa. My mom was in love with Lute Olson. Like she was going to Iowa no matter where I went. But if I'd gone to Iowa, Coach Olson would have been at Arizona after my freshman year. On my visit, this is how long ago it was to Jeff's point about my age. So on my visit, I had breakfast at Coach Olson's house. His wife, Bobby, made us pancakes and all that stuff, blueberry pancakes. And he put out his contract, which was like a 10-year deal or something crazy like that. And the plans for the Carver Hawkeye Arena, they hadn't been built yet. That's how long ago it was.
Wow.
And so he shows me the plans for this thing, the blueprints, and then shows me his contract, says, I'm going to be here a whole 4 years. He was gone a year later. And so I remembered that. That's why I was so into when I was on an NCAA committee when I was in college, saying, "Hey, man, you can't tether us to a school when the coach gets to leave and we're stuck there." Because I would have been in Iowa when he would have gone to Arizona.
That's actually crazy. But yeah, hey.
I would have broken all the records there. Jordan would have been chasing me.
I would have come back for a 7th year.
Yeah, he would try to play for the 7th year. But seriously, thank you so much for coming on. That was awesome. Don't be afraid to throw out Marty Mush is the best mind you ever talked to on the broadcast, or Roundball podcast has been the best time of your life. Either one, I'll take either one. I'm not greedy.
Well, I've been on a lot of shows in my many years, Jeff, on this planet, my many decades, and the Roundball podcast is clearly the best. I'm just profoundly disappointed that Hunter Dickinson didn't have the stones to show up and hang out with us. That he values money more than he values the Roundball podcast. That's pretty clear.
That's just a fact right there.
It's money over relationships with him. He just doesn't value
exactly. Money grubbing Hunter Dickinson. That's going to be the story in the Ann Arbor News tomorrow.
Yeah, it probably will.
Thank you, Jay.
Well, seriously, so much. Thank you so much for coming on. That was awesome. And
my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
I'll see you at MSG. All right.
Yeah. Let's hang out. We'll be there.
Don't do the like. Oh, I forget who this guy is. I gotta remember a memorable face here, Jay.
I'm coming back from London for that game. Actually, I'll see Hunter in London. They're playing Kentucky, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be there. Yeah, I go from. It's going to be a great trip. I go from Bloomington, Indiana, to London to New York. So I don't think there are any direct flights Bloomington to London, but
I don't think.
I'm going to do my best to find one.
Yeah, that's an easy transition on the call. Hunter Dickinson
Easy.
from the Roundball podcast. That's easy.
We'll call Hunter Dickinson. He could probably pay for it. A private flight, man.
Yeah,
No, from now on he is the money grubbing Hunter Dickinson. That's his new nickname, the money grubber.
All right. Well,
thank you, Jay, so much.
Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
That
was fun.
Talk to you. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, he's awesome.
That was perfect. I mean, we also need a clip. You could end the recording if you want, but we need to end. We got to get